Ladies and gentlemen of Ontario, I hate to be the one to inform you, but as you probably already know, we may be in a beer crisis. And if you listen to the Ford government or you go on almost any of their ministers' feeds or on Ford's Twitter feed, the sky might as well be falling in. All of a sudden, we have this big crisis on our hands. I understand when the Ford government came to power, one of his talking points was a buck of beer. All right, well, at the time the Ford government took over, the minimum price for a beer was $1.25. So they canceled the quarter and they canceled what I believe was about a 3-cent raise, which was coming in taxes on a beer. Now, it's been well over a decade since I've seen a buck of beer cost in the stores. And I'm not even going to attempt to discuss the quality of what came out of the bottle. But if a corporation, if a brewer was going to be making a profit selling their product at $1 a beer, do you not think that someone out there would be brewing that, would be selling it, it would be on the shelf? All that happened was a couple of brewers stepped up to the plate and then dropped the price of their beer and turned it into an introductory offer. Well, let's get people buying our beer a couple of times. Hopefully they like it, and then they'll pay the regular price for it later. Well, that died off pretty quick because I don't see any buck of beer. It's just a failed concept. It's just not a priority for what looks like almost anybody in this province. So then the government's going on now about the beer store contract. We don't own the beer store. Well, I don't know if, I knew that the beer store wasn't owned by the province. I think a lot of people did, but that's irrelevant. If you don't like the contract, then you can sit down with the beer store and you can request that you renegotiate these sections of the contract. If they agree and you reach a new agreement, you can then amend the contract that's in force, that's alive now. If the beer store says no, this is a legally binding contract. It's basically almost a living entity. It has a lifespan. When it comes to the end of its lifespan, you can start from scratch. You don't like parts of the contract, you can start laying down the groundwork for the negotiations for when the contract comes due and its life ends. We have communities in Northern Ontario that got to the point where they needed military assistance to get airlifted out of their communities because they're underwater. We have communities that had to be evacuated because we got fires coming down on them. We got so many other issues in this province. And we're spending all this time worried about the contract with the beer store. Let the contract come to an end, renegotiate it whatever way you like. There's a lot of issue that they're screaming about is, craft beers. Well, there's a lot of issues with getting craft beer to the market. The smaller brewers don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the finances to really get out there and to put their product out into the stores, and then can't afford it because unless their product is selling, now they're stuck paying for shelf space, they're stuck transporting. There's a whole bunch of issues. I'll touch more on that when I talk about the actual corner stores. Now, if we tear up this contract, it's estimated currently at $1 billion. Okay, we'll take that with a grain of salt, more than a grain of salt, because the union's going to say one thing, government's saying the other thing. I don't know where this is going to end up, but this is a legally binding piece of paper. It's going to end up in the court system. All right, this is ridiculous at the way this is going to be going. Now, I'm going to play some audio from the legislature. PCMP Jane McKenna. If I butchered that name, I apologize. I'm going to skip her first question. We'll leave it at Ford's answer, which had really very little to do with the question that was asked. We'll go through supplementary. And we'll break it down. We'll discuss it. We'll see how things go.
Following the introduction of the Bringing Choice and Fairness to the People last week, could the Premier inform the House of what else our government is doing to fulfill the promises we made to the good people of Ontario?
Questions to the Premier.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Speaker, and I want to thank the member from Burlington for the question and all the great work she does in Burlington. There the Speaker. Through you, Mr. Speaker, we made a promise to the people of Ontario, and we plan on keeping our promises as we've kept all our promises all the way since last year. It's almost come up to be a year. We're going to put beer and wine in the corner stores and big box stores and more grocery stores.
Okay, so we got the issue of corner store sales. Putting beer and wine into the corner stores. Okay, I don't have a yes and I don't have a no. I'm going to kind of split my argument between 2 points of yes and no. What I'm going to start with is responsibility of sales. When you go into a conglomerate store, beer store, LCBO, you walk into the big grocery stores, person behind the counter doesn't care whether that sale gets made or not. Their paycheck doesn't revolve around it. Their livelihood doesn't revolve around it. In a corner store, a convenience store, every sale matters. Now, I'm going to sound like I'm accusing the stores, corner stores, but let's just take a look at one thing and drive in front of a high school. I mean, thankfully it's reducing over the years, but you drive in front of a high school and you got the kids, okay, teens, early 20s. You got the kids smoking. Do you think they got those cigarettes out of a big box store somewhere or a big main store? Some of them got it because we got the same issue with, adults going in and buying beer or liquor or alcohol, whatever, for teens. Well, that's something we got to deal with. That's some society that the law has to deal with. But when you walk into a corner store, I mean, honestly, do you really think they're going to turn down a sale? Some will, most will, some won't. So it's the responsibility of sales. As an adult, I mean, okay, that store's open 24 hours a day. I really don't care if you got to get your fix at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to suggest if that's the case, shouldn't be laughing, but perhaps you should think about getting some help. Because if you're really that need of alcohol at those off hours, you might want to seek some help. Now, in the corner stores or convenience stores, I don't know about you, but any store that I've ever been in, there's stuff to the rafters. Shelf space is at a premium. So where are they going to put the beer and the alcohol? If they put it in the refrigerator, well, you got companies like Coke and Pepsi that might have something to say about it because they're going to be losing shelf space and visibility for their products. Second of all, do you really think that executive in his 4-piece suit driving the Bentley is going to stop his or her car and run into the convenience store and buy a $150 bottle of wine? Or do you think somebody's going to walk in on this off the street, buy that $10 bottle and go in the back alley and get sloshed? Okay? I mean, honestly, what do you think is going to be in these corner stores? Do you think it's going to be one of these high price, high quality beers? Or is it going to be the main brands that have a chance of selling? What do you really think is going to be supplied at a corner store? You got a big push of, the craft beers. Well, even take a look at a regular beer. You can go into the liquor store, you can go into a beer store, buy a can of beer for $3, just as an example. Now, just off the top of my head with absolutely no evidence behind it, why should I go into a corner store and buy that same can at $5.99? Why? Because it's convenient? So the corner stores, they're going to have to give up shelf space for something. Other things are going to be pushed to the side or not carried anymore. And it's the point of the responsibility of the sales. Is that corner store with its single employee usually going to stop that sale? Or are they going to make the sale? If you go to a beer store, there's a staff. You go into the liquor store, there's a staff. You have some security behind you. You don't think 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, you don't think there's going to be a security issue at these stores? You don't think these cash register people are going to be put in harm's way? I don't know. Now, I said this wasn't a yes or a no answer. You want it in the corner stores, okay. In the major city areas, in the GTA, in Southern Ontario, I'm going to go on the side of no for convenience stores. You got the box stores, you got the big stores, but again, like I said, the employee standing behind the cash register, their livelihood doesn't depend on making that sale. So they have the full ability to deny the sale for either you don't have the right ID, you don't have ID, you're impaired, whatever the case may be. Now in Southern Ontario, I mean, you can buy alcohol conveniently in a lot of places. Not only just the beer store, the liquor store. You got bars all over the place. You got restaurants all over the place that are licensed. I mean, supply really isn't a problem. If you can't figure out how to have your alcohol between 10 a.m. and midnight, if you can't figure out how to buy it in between those hours, you got a bigger problem than having it in the corner store. Now, the yes part of the convenience store issue would be in smaller towns. Now, what a small town is and where you're going to draw the line on that, I don't know. That's something, let's leave that to the government to make that decision. But if you're in a smaller community, and you don't have these big grocery stores or box stores and whatnot, then, all right, let the corner store, let the convenience store have their sales. Let them sell the beer and the wine and whatnot. I mean, you're never going to have the the amount and the variety that you do in the current two stores. Now, I'm not necessarily defending the unionization or the big corporations that own the beer store, but they're not going to set up shop in some small town where the general store is where you buy everything, and the one store has everything from food to clothing to tools and gas out back or out front. All right, so if you want to talk about going into small communities, I'd say open up the stores. Let the corner stores, let the main stores carry beer and alcohol or wine. But when you're dealing with developed cities, large cities, I mean, is it really an issue? Honestly, is it really an issue in Southern Ontario especially? I mean, these stores are all over the place.
And I was thinking of our visitor from the United States. He's probably sitting up there thinking, you got to be kidding me. You don't have beer in a grocery store? You don't have wine? Well, I want to say to our friend from the United States, we're the only jurisdiction in the entire world that had a sweetheart deal from the previous Liberal government, the Liberal lobbyists that made millions of dollars off the backs of the taxpayers, increased the cost of beer at the beer store. And Mr. Speaker, we're going to make sure people have the convenience when they hold a barbecue to be able to go into the store and actually buy a case of beer.
Thank you. Thank you. The supplementary question.
Okay, so we have 2 points that Mr. Ford brought up, Premier Ford brought up. Oh, my friend from the States is here and he can't believe... Personally, I really don't care what they do in the States. I don't care what they have in the U.S. Okay, I don't care if they sell a beer every second house. That's got nothing to do with us. It's got nothing to do with Canada, Canadians, or Ontario. South of the border here, your child gets sick, you race them to the hospital, you could be done. Your finances could be done. Your child gets sick, you can run through your life savings you can run through your pension, you can run through everything, sell your house, sell your car, and you can be desolate for the rest of your life and bankrupt because you're going to have to declare bankruptcy. You got some drug companies moving their prices from $40 to almost $40,000 because they're greed. I don't care. I find it extremely annoying when especially politicians, especially like Ford, keep going on about, oh, my friend's from the States. Good. Then you go down there. You and your friend go down there and you can get slap happy in the back alley all you want. Okay? That's not Canada. That's not Ontario. You could have used the example of the province right beside us. You could have used Quebec as your example. Right? Quebec has a lot more stores that do sell alcohol. And then he goes on how the previous government and this apparently bad deal has raised the beer prices to what? To the highest levels. Well, out of the 10 provinces, yes. Let's see. Ontario's price has been raised for an average cost of a case of beer. Has been raised so high that we are second lowest in the 10 provinces. Only Quebec has an average lower cost for a case of beer. So when he brings up this point, it's complete and total utter propaganda. It doesn't mean anything. Just outright propaganda. And he goes on and on about it. Now we can also look at Quebec's consumption. Out of the 10 provinces, depends how you calculate what metrics you use, but it's either Quebec or Alberta that come out on top as the number one consumption in alcohol. Ontario consistently ranks as 9th out of the 10 provinces. Now, I'm not dealing with the territories. That's a whole other issue. There's a bunch of additional costs and issues that go with territories. But in the provinces, no. Ontario has the second lowest average price for a case of beer. It's just an outright, I'm going to say, lie at this point in time, because numbers don't lie.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Premier for his response. It is exciting to hear how our government is committed to expanding the sale of beer and wine. We all know that consumers, small businesses, and local breweries all stand to benefit. The Retail Council of Canada says that expanding the market could create up to 9,000 new jobs and add $3.5 billion to Ontario's GDP. It will introduce a much-needed competition that will help lead to lower costs for consumers. It will provide convenience to responsible adults and support growth in our small businesses from Burlington all the way to Belleville and beyond. Clearly, the status quo is unacceptable. Could the Premier explain why bringing fairness to the people is so important to us?
Premier.
Thank you, Speaker, and I want to thank the member for the question once again. You've heard our All-Star Minister of Finance say this, and I'll say it again. This isn't about just beer and wine. It's not just about choice and convenience. This is about fairness. It's about fairness to the people. It's about the fairness to the retail folks that are out there working all day, all night. Most people don't realize that the beer store isn't owned by the government. It's owned by three global giants that don't worry about the people in Ontario. They're worried about putting money in their pockets. That's what they're worried about. We're worried about the convenience. And isn't it amazing, Mr. Speaker? Just imagine, but we aren't going to do this. Just imagine if all the NDP ridings opted out. They'd be going crazy, their constituents, if they ever opted out. But we aren't going to do that because we're going to make sure we give your constituents a convenience.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know. All I can say is, wow. So we're going to put beer and wine at the corner stores, and then all of a sudden, magically, 9,000 jobs are going to be created? Where in the hell are you pulling this number out of? Just because you put one additional item into a store, you're going to create 9,000 jobs? From where? From what? How? This is ridiculous. Where do you, I don't understand. Now, I've already touched on the average cost of a case of beer in Ontario is second lowest, only lower by Quebec. But Ms. McKenna here brings that up again. We're going to lower costs. How are you going to lower costs? Why? Because the corner store is going to carry 2-3 brands? Maybe? I've already touched on, what do you think? The executive coming home is going to stop for a $150 bottle of wine? Come on. If I'm heading up to the cottage, either I haul everything from home or I get up to the cottage and then I do some shopping once I get up there. If I'm heading camping, if it ain't in the car when I leave, I ain't gonna have space for it because the car's already loaded up with gear and supplies. And if I didn't have space for it to begin with, I ain't got space for it to stop anywhere in any store along the way. Which leads to a secondary issue. What about the empties? Where are they gonna end up? If you didn't have space in your vehicle when you're leaving home and you stuffed it in somewhere halfway up to your camping or your cottage trip, what do you think is going to happen to those empties? Yeah. And you talk about fairness and getting craft beers into the stores. Really? Are you going to mandate that a convenience store has X amount of craft beer as pertaining to the main store or main brand or big brand beers? Really? That's in the contract now with the grocery stores. They have to have a certain amount of shelf space for the craft beers and the small breweries. Are you going to force that onto every convenience store? You really think they have the space to carry it? You really think they have the financing to carry it? You really think they have the financing to hang on to a product for who knows how long before it might or might not sell? Okay, so this is an issue, it's a double issue of if you're in, we'll just blanket, say Southern Ontario, and we got the convenience here, beer, liquor everywhere. You can get your hands on it. Going into the smaller towns somewhere, okay, I can see it being put into more convenience stores or the general store, for example. But in any case, there's a lot more important things. I mean, look, we've already spent far too long even discussing this issue. This shouldn't even be an issue. There's a lot of things that are a lot more important. Breaking the contract for this is beyond ridiculous. There's zero reason for this. The sky isn't falling. We got beer sales from some of these stores are open from 9:30, some are 9 o'clock until midnight or whatever. If you can't get your alcohol between those hours, then you're not responsible enough to go into a corner store at 3 o'clock in the morning and buy alcohol at that point. That was my rant. Thank you for listening. Let me know what you think.